Some Inconvenient Gun Facts for Liberals by Nicholas Kristof of the New York Times. Credit where credit is due. For those of us who argue in favor of gun safety laws, there are a few inconvenient facts. Well, gun safety laws is a euphemism for the state violently disarming peaceful people and murdering them if they don't want to give the government a monopoly on guns. And, government's the number one cause of mass murder throughout all of history. So saying that you believe in gun safety is just a lie. We liberals are sometimes glib about equating guns and danger. In fact, it's complicated. The number of guns in America has increased by more than 50% since 1993. And in that same period, the gun homicide rate in the United States has dropped by half. More guns, less crime, as John Lott likes to say. Then there are the policies that liberals fight for, starting with the assault weapons ban. Here we have another euphemism. I really appreciate this gentleman admitting when he's wrong or that his position has some flaws, but calling it an assault weapons ban, that doesn't address the fact that it didn't apply to government. Government got a monopoly on these things. If I said, I believe in banning cars, but the Koch brothers can still have cars. Well, that's not a ban. You're just giving one group a monopoly on everything else, putting everyone else at their whim. So saying we support a ban, no, then it would apply to every single person. Everyone has the right to steal everyone else's assault weapon. That would be an actual ban, not giving the government the right to forcibly disarm the peasantry. A 113-page study found no clear indication that it reduced shooting deaths for the 10 years it was in effect. That's because the ban was poorly drafted, and because even before the ban, assault weapons accounted for only 2% of guns used in crime. So what they like to say is, well, Australia had a gun buyback, which is another euphemism. You can't buy back what you never owned. It was a confiscation bill in which they bribed people to not resist. This is the 1996 Australia Gun Confiscation Bill. It's important to mention, 1, violence with guns was already falling at a similar pace. 2, criminals replaced guns with knives. So it's not like, well, then murder stopped. They still either got access to illegal guns or used different tools. 3, during the same period, violence fell at a higher rate in America. This is according to the work of Dr. Anthony Davies and James Harrigan in their book Cooperation and Coercion. They use these graphs right here. All homicides in Australia and gun homicides in the U.S., we see them constantly decreasing. Second, if we compute the same 2 7-year periods in the United States, we find that the annual U.S. homicides fell from an average of 23,267 to an average of 16,432. That's a 29% decline versus Australia's 22% decline. So, it's not like, there's only one way to get people to stop being violent, and that's a gun ban. You either want dead people or you agree with us. We want a gun ban. No. That's a false dichotomy. The U.S. versus 8%. They go on to compare the U.S. to Brazil or Mexico, which has much stricter gun laws, yet more violence. If you look within the United States, places like Chicago have heavy gun laws and are more violent per capita than other places. Homicides in Australia before and after, yes, as I mentioned, they were going down at the same rate. Move on to open carry and concealed carry laws, with some 13 million Americans now licensed to pack a concealed gun. Oh, we got to pump those numbers up. There's like 330 million people, and only 13 million have the ability to defend themselves against an aggressor with teeth. Many liberals expected gun battles to be erupting all around us. In fact, the most rigorous analogists suggest that all of these gun permits caused neither a drop in crime, as conservatives had predicted, nor a spike in killings, as liberals had expected. Liberals were much closer to the truth, for the increase in carrying loaded guns does not appear to have led to more aggravated assaults with guns, but the fears were overblown. I might have read that. Liberals were closer to the truth, for the increase in carrying loaded guns does appear to have led to more aggressive, aggravated assaults. Correlation is not causation. As we saw earlier, when something increases 50%, that doesn't necessarily mean they'll be used more, in case it can be a deterrent for other aggressors. One of the puzzles of American politics is that most voters want gun regulation, but Congress resists. The argument from popularity still being used. Well, the fact that most voters, which by every metric and every study I've ever looked at, has said that voters are statistically totally ignorant on history, morality, guns, logic, philosophy. Very few can even name their senator or let alone their congressman. Even fewer know which laws have been passed by their representatives or what laws have been brought to the floor or the history of these individuals in Congress. So the fact that that ignorant people want something, I'm not even going to waste my time with the rest of that paragraph. So why does nothing get done? Oh, nothing get done. Look, why does nothing get done? We had that same period, the gun homicide rate in the United States dropped by half. How is that nothing getting done? They're only counting it as something getting done when the state can monopolize the tool of tyranny, the weapon. One reason is that liberals often inadvertently antagonize gun owners and empower the National Rifle Association by coming across as supercalish, condescending, and spectacularly uninformed about guns they propose to regulate. So if you admit they come off as spectacularly uninformed on average, well, then the fact that people want to regulate guns or the people are calling for some laws to be passed, well, you just admitted they're completely ignorant, so we shouldn't be listening to them. A classic of gun ignorance. New York passed a law 3 years ago banning gun magazines holding more than 7 bullets without realizing that for most guns, there is no such thing as a magazine for 7 bullets or less. And every time liberals speak blithely about guns, they boost the NRA. Let's also banish the term gun control. The better expression is gun safety. It's not gun safety if you believe the police should come to my house, say, give me your gun, and we're going to murder you if you disobey us. That is not safety. That is tyranny. But I guess government schools have certainly done a number on your brain, along with the mainstream media, which really is helping us out with this Russia collusion that, any day now, Trump is going to be exposed. They boost the NRA. This is a tactic where they say, oh, this is just for the NRA. Why does nothing get done? The NRA. It's a lot easier than addressing the principles. I do not support gun control or gun safety laws or confiscation because it has one people, government, initiate violence against another people, citizenry. It says we're going to murder you if you don't hand in your guns and give us a monopoly on these guns. It's also a method of saying there's no real argument. There's useful idiots, and then there's the NRA. So don't feel bad that we're taking guns away from peaceful people. Just realize that we're fighting the good fight against the big corporate controllers, which is like saying, oh, people people complain about Jim Crow laws, but that's just the ACLU. That's just the NAACP talking points. Well, are their arguments moral or immoral? You have to pick one. You can't just say, well, there's a group of people that have formed a lobby, and now I've addressed the concerns. Yet this too must be said, Americans are absolutely right to be outraged at the toll of guns. Just since 1970, more Americans have died from guns than all the Americans who died in wars going back to the American Revolution. 1.45 million versus 1.4 million. How about people killed privately versus people killed by governments? How about democide versus private murder? I would ignore those as well. We're not saying that people don't commit crimes privately. We're saying it's better than the state violently disarming us. That gun toll includes suicides, murders, and accidents. And these days it amounts to 92 bodies a day. Look, that makes me sick. I hate that. I want it to be 0 a day. So whatever methods we got us to gun homicide rate in the United States dropping by half, find out what those are, let me know what they are, and I will happily stand alongside you to achieve those ends peacefully without the state initiating violence. We spend billions of dollars tackling terrorism. Well, not really. We spend a lot of money funding terrorism to fight Assad, spend a lot of money giving guns to the Mexican drug cartel, which I'm sure they did background checks when they, armed Al Qaeda in Syria, and when they gave guns to the Mexican drug cartel in Operation Fast and Furious, which killed 229 Americans worldwide from 2005 to 2014. Yeah, so we could say that this spending is totally out of control and unjustified without it leading to, well, therefore, government gets to take all our guns. So, of course, we should try to reduce this carnage, but we need a new strategy, a public health approach that treats guns as we do cars, taking evidence-based steps to make them safer. That seems to be the way President Obama is trying to do. Research suggests that the most important practical step would be to keep guns away from high-risk individuals such as criminals, those who abuse alcohol, or those who beat up their domestic partners. Look, I believe in any voluntary method of achieving your ends, but to say that a bunch of peaceful, innocent individuals don't have the right to get guns because other people are bad is literally like saying no one in government has the right to have guns unless I give them a license because other people are bad. So government, turn in all your guns. Because, we just can't trust you, since governments committed all these atrocities, all these genocides, Hitler, Mao, Stalin, Pol Pot, Kissinger, Idi Amin, Kim Il-sung, just a couple examples. Then I'll do a background check on you, government, and we'll see if you pass it. This means universal background checks before somebody acquires a gun. New Harvard research confirms a long ago finding that 40% of firearms in the United States are acquired without a background check. That is crazy. Nope, that is totally justified. You have no right to stop those things from happening. I'm so sorry people die, but you don't have the right to forcibly stop them from making this peaceful trade. Why empower criminals? If you're afraid of empowering criminals, do not give government a monopoly on guns. Some evidence supports these steps seem common sense. More than 10% of murders in the United States, for example, are by intimate partners. The riskiest moment is often after a violent breakup when a woman has won a restraining order against her ex. Well, maybe if the government didn't monopolize the court system, we'd have a better court system, and that wouldn't happen as often. Prohibiting the subjects of those restraining orders from possessing a gun reduces these murders by 10%, one study found. What if we disarm government and there weren't any more wars based on lies that kill Jesus knows how many civilians? Would that reduce murder? If you can keep a gun from someone at that moment of threat, that is very important. Yeah, look, I believe that there are times when someone is not sane. So in that individual case, I would support something like that. Doesn't mean I support government doing it. It means people have the right to do so, whether they're acting in their capacity as an individual or as a part of a security organization. Some public health approaches to reducing gun violence have nothing to do with guns. I totally believe that violence is often a reflection of many other things, trauma that goes on in people's heads. Or, I guess that's what happens when you advocate big government and people have no respect for property rights or the lives of others. They're just like, you're a thing getting in my way of achieving my dream of the state monopolizing guns and the state monopolizing the economy, and I'd be rich if it weren't for millionaires, so I'm so bitter, and there's so much racism, and there's so much sexism with the wage gap. Maybe if we didn't have the state intentionally dividing people based on lies, maybe we'd get along better. Researchers find that a nonprofit called Cure Violence, which works with gangs, curbs gun violence. Hey, look at that, a peaceful way. So long as public health is funded voluntarily, not through taxation, then absolutely, keep up the good work. Voluntary ways of reducing death, I couldn't stand. I'm looking those things up right when I'm done. An initiative called Fast Track supports high-risk children and reduces delinquency and adult crime. Sure, absolutely, loving it. In short, let's get smarter. Would you consider it smart to say, hey, number one cause of war, genocide, and mass murder, let's give you all the guns. Yeah, that doesn't sound too smart. Let's make America's gun battle less ideological and more driven by evidence of what works. What works? Where's the moral foundation? Does slavery work? Does racism work? Does rape work? Does murder work? Does theft work? It's not about what works, it's about what's morally justified. If the left can drop the sanctimony and the right can drop the obstructionism, if instead of wrestling with each other, we can grapple with the evidence, we can save thousands of lives each year, I am looking up fast track and curb gun violence right away. Hope you enjoyed this article summary and propaganda analysis. I want to thank Nicholas Kristof again for, hey, it's not easy to admit when your side has a weak argument, but definitely appreciate someone leading by example.